So, Deltarune Chapters 3 and 4 are releasing in about 5 weeks, and with the hype around the game building higher and higher, I decided to cover a unique aspect of Deltarune each week until the game's release. Now, last week I did a theory video covering what might happen with Chapter 3's Dark Fountain, so after all that theory crafting, I thought it might be fun to sit down and take on a few of the unique challenges that the currently released chapters of Deltarune had to offer. But before we begin, let me just say thank you all so much for the support on the past 2 videos, and as always, welcome to Epoch, your favorite place for everything indie game related, and let's talk about the top 5 challenges I would recommend trying before Deltarune's official release. Now, I think it goes without saying, but some of the battles and challenges in Deltarune are extremely difficult, so instead of showing the challenges in a random order, I will be starting with the easiest challenges first, and then going to the more difficult challenges available later in the video. With that being said, let's talk about the first challenge, the easiest one by far, that being completing the first 2 chapters. Before attempting any other challenges in Deltarune, the first challenge you'll definitely need to do is completing the main game in full, including the pacifist route and the weird route. Although not necessarily the most challenging, the fights here definitely can be difficult the first few go-arounds, but there are several things that you can gather along the way to make all of the challenges a lot more manageable. So along with this section just being a rundown of how to make completing the game easier, the tips that I give will massively help with the other challenges. That being said, if you're familiar with chapters 1 and 2 in their entirety, please bear with me as I cover this section, or go to the timestamp for the next section. So for those of you looking for your first completion, or even just some tips on how to beat the game easier, let's go over a few things. The first thing that you'll want to do to finish the game as easily as possible is to make sure that you gather the best gear that you can while playing through these chapters. In chapter 1, make sure to open the chest in the Field of Hopes and Dreams area, seeing as there's a piece of armor called the White Ribbon, which definitely helps throughout the first chapter. And when available, you should try to buy the Amber Card and the Spooky Sword from Sham's shop, since Amber Cards will give you more defense, and the Spooky Sword will give you a greater attack output with Chris when you reach the King at the end of the chapter. You can also buy the Brave Axe and Dainty Scarf when you reach Rule's Card's shop and the castle, giving Susie and Ralze more attack for the King fight as well, and make sure to grab the Iron Shackles on the wall during the prison escape sequence. But good weapons and armor probably aren't the only things you'll want for a normal completion, so let's talk about healing items. You'll probably need plenty of healing items throughout your first completion, and there are quite a few places to get good healing items. You can of course buy them when at either of the 2 shops, Sham's shop having dark candies and dark burgers, and Rule's Card's shop having the Rule's Ruse item, but along with those 2 is the bake sale area selling Choco Diamonds, which heal Chris for a lot, and the Heart's Donut, healing Susie for a large amount and Ralze for a normal amount. But you can also obtain dark candies from these trees throughout the first chapter. There is one in this area of the Field of Hopes and Dreams giving a free 2 dark candies, and another one is found after Lancer joins the party, but sadly you can't get any dark candy from that one since Lancer eats it. But there are 2 other healing items that are rather unique and heal the entire party instead of just one character. In this room of the card castle, there is an obtainable healing item called the Club Sandwich, and when eaten it heals 30 HP for the entire party in chapter 1, but surprisingly changes to 70 HP in chapter 2. This can help a lot for the more difficult areas and fights, but another thing that helps a lot is the spin cake. This cake at the beginning of the Field of Hopes and Dreams can be taken as an item, and when at the bake sale can be fixed by this NPC named Malleus, max healing everyone in the party in chapter 1, but instead of using it right off the bat, if you bring it back to the baker NPC in the cake room, he will turn it into a spin cake, a healing item that is infinitely renewable so long as you don't already have one in your inventory, and it heals 80 HP to the entire party, switching to 140 HP in chapter 2. Now, all of that put together should get you through chapter 1 extremely easily, and going into chapter 2 it should work quite well, but there are some improvements that you should probably check out before leaving Castle Town in chapter 2. When arriving at Castle Town in chapter 2, there will be a bakery that you can replenish your spin cake at, assuming you didn't anger the cake chef in chapter 1, as well as a place to upgrade certain gear, which I would highly recommend getting. If you have 2 or more dark burgers in your inventory, then Malleus will combine them into the double dark burger, a healing item that is extremely useful throughout chapter 2. Another item is a silver card made by combining 2 amber cards together, which will help you earn extra money in chapter 2 and give slightly more defense than and the Amber card. These are the only two things that you can fuse before Chapter 2's Dark World, so while possible, I would recommend getting as many double dark burgers as you need, and then when in the Chapter 2 Dark World, you can get an item pretty early on in the form of the Fiber Scarf, obtained by completing this puzzle and opening the chest, while also saying hi to Newbert. The next items that you can get are from Sweet Captain Cake's shop, those being the Glow Wrist, giving the same defense as the Silver card, but I would still recommend getting one for fusing later, and then you can also get the Mecha Saber and the Auto Axe for Chris and Susie, giving them a large amount of damage. You can also get a free Glow Wrist from this chest while collecting check marks for the Hacker side quest. After that, make sure to get every arrow on this teacup ride to obtain the Ragger 2 for Ralsei, and after Susie and Ralsei have left the party, this is where you'll have the ability to do the weird route, so long as you didn't fully recruit any enemies throughout Chapter 2. On the weird route, be sure to give Noelle the freeze ring as soon as possible, and off the weird route, if you are out of healing items, then try buying the Susie tea, since it heals Noelle for the most, and Chris is also healed for quite a lot. On the weird route, be sure to get the Thorn ring and use Snowgrave to defeat Birdly, while off the weird route, there isn't much better gear to get throughout this section, although there is a chest where Chris can obtain the Bounce Blade, one that gives higher defense but reduces offense, which can be very useful throughout this section. Once you get to Queen's Mansion, be sure to buy the bow tie from the shop for fusing later, and also healing items if you need them. Optionally, you can also get the Royal Pin, but it is quite pricey and only raises your defense by 1 compared to the Silver card. Throughout Queen's Mansion, there isn't much else for the equipment that you'll need, although there is a revivement in this chest that can be used for the boss fight. When facing Queen on the normal route, you should act on Birdly for a truly pacifist ending, and then attack the shield when it raises, since that is faster than acting to get rid of the shield. Once defeated, you will face Queen in her Giga form, which with some practice should be easy enough. Although if you made sure to recruit everyone, then you will have much more health than you otherwise would. However, on the weird route alternative, you won't be facing Queen, but instead, before the fountain closes, you'll be facing Spamton Neo with Chris alone. Before this fight, I would recommend equipping the best gear possible to Chris so that the fight is easier than it otherwise would be. Making sure to take the Royal Pin from Noelle to equip to Chris, and when the fountain is sealed on both routes, that's your first challenge completed, leading us to the challenges that you would go out of your way to accomplish outside the main game. Now that we have the normal game out of the way, the next challenge that I would recommend trying is the Party Dojo's Chapter 2 All-Stars Challenge. After completing Chapter 2, you can go to the Party Dojo and take on various challenges, but one that is accessible only after recruiting everyone is the Chapter 2 All-Stars Challenge. This is a battle with all of the enemies in Chapter 2 and can be cleared regardless of whether or not you spare or attack. Now, this challenge can be a great test for those who just came off their first completion of Chapters 1 and 2, and with the correct gear, it shouldn't give someone who has played both chapters all the way through much of an issue, but it is a very fun challenge to try out and gives an item called the Tension Gem, which is a solid reward for those willing to take this thing on. But there is another challenge that people really like to try, that being the secret bosses. Now, I'm not going to go into either of these in huge detail since they are the most well-known challenges in the game, but Jevil and Spamton are the two bosses that require several steps to access in the first place, and when fought are considered more difficult than King and Queen respectively. Using the same gear that you would ordinarily use against King and Queen, these fights are generally not that difficult, and usually can be completed after a few attempts, but they still push players to their limits the first few times they're fought. After defeating them, they give special items, differing depending on what method you use to defeat them. When using pacifism, they will give armor pieces that are by far the best in the game, and make King and Queen a piece of cake. And when attacking them, they will give weapons that drastically increase damage output, but I would recommend the better armor in almost every circumstance. But although secret bosses are considered one of the hardest challenges, there are still a few things that you can do to make the game more difficult on yourself, one of which being speedrunning. Speedrunning is a very common challenge to prove your expertise at a certain game, and that is no exception to Deltarune, having a very competitive leaderboard for the chapter speedruns. The movement is very refined in the best speedruns, and the top times on the leaderboards are only apart by a few seconds at most, so if you're looking for something to challenge yourself, then trying to speedrun each chapter can be a great test of determination. There is still something that is generally considered more difficult than a good speedrun, that being no-hitting. No-hit runs are one of the most difficult challenges in games, generally being limited to certain bosses, although full full game no hits are also a thing. But if you are looking for something that you can do before Deltarune Chapters 3 and 4 come out, then I would recommend the secret boss no hits. Jevil and Spamton are by far the most difficult enemies in Deltarune, and what better way to show off your skill than by defeating them without getting hit once? Well, it definitely takes a while to no hit either of these bosses, but considering how Jevil is viewed as a more difficult secret boss, I would recommend trying your luck at Spamton first. Now, I actually recently completed a no-hit run on all 3 routes of Spamton, and I have a few pointers that could possibly help out should any of you try to attempt this challenge. If you are going for a no-hit on the attacking route or the weird route, then generating as much TP as possible so that you can use X/ or Root Buster is very important, since there are some attacks that you will want to phase skip over, such as this one, but in the pacifist route you'll want to avoid generating TP since it is more risky and leads to a higher risk of getting hit. With that in mind, the first and second attacks should be the exact same regardless of which route you're doing. Shoot at the faces and don't get hit by anything. And then for this first heart one on the attacking route and weird route, you'll want to not destroy it, as this is the best attack for TP generation. By going to the left when it starts shooting out the diamonds, and to the right as it stops, you can graze against 6 separate diamonds each time it shoots the diamonds out, which is very useful since it allows Root Buster and X/ to be used a lot more throughout the fight. And it is important to deal a certain amount of damage by the second time this heart attack is used in those 2 routes. Though in the pacifist route, make sure to destroy it as fast as possible. On the Pippas attack, regardless of route, be sure to shoot the Pippas before they reach the box, and on this next attack make sure to shoot while trying to stay in the middle unless these ring attacks are in there. On this attack with the nose, eyes, and mouth, be sure to destroy the mouth first, as it is the most unpredictable of the 3, and the other 2 shouldn't give you much of a problem, although you can destroy them if you want. This next heart attack is the one that you'll want to have gotten him below 30% health after it is finished for both the attacking route and the weird route, since that will force his next attack to be a heart attack and then the one where he gets hit in the face by small versions of his face. But regardless of route, you'll want to destroy this heart since it is much more unpredictable than the first one. After that, for pacifist, you'll have this attack, which I'd recommend using single shots for getting rid of the faces, and if they come in from both sides, then try to shoot out one side as much as possible before moving to the right to avoid the things they shoot at you. And once that attack is complete, you'll have one more with the face, although with the mouth gone, it will be a lot less difficult than the first time. After that, on all routes, there will be a final heart attack which you'll want to shoot until it is gone, and with the call attack, you basically just have a free turn. After which, Spamton will have this giant form attack, and after dodging that, the fight will be over, unless you're on the weird route in which you will have to dodge these Pippas attacks for 4 turns until you call Noelle's name and end the fight. With all that being said, you should be able to no-hit Spamton given enough practice, and then possibly go on to Jevil to learn those attack patterns and no-hit him as well. And that is all for the top 5 challenges to try before Deltarune Chapters 3 and 4. I personally think that attempting at least one of these is a must before they release, so if you want to give one a go, then now is as good a time as any. And considering this is my 3rd video ever, if you're watching this video before the release of Deltarune Chapters 3 and 4, then consider yourself one of the OGs. I am extremely grateful for any one of you taking time to click on this video and watch it all the way through, as it will help me make more videos like this in the future. And who knows, considering how this channel's growth has already blown my expectations out of the water, maybe by the time Deltarune releases, you'll have a community here much larger than I ever could have possibly dreamed. That being said, if you enjoyed this video, then you might enjoy my other 2 videos covering Deltarune, so if you want to, feel free to check them out before Chapters 3 and 4 release. And until then, this has been Epoch, your place for everything indie game related, and with that being said, I would like to use the rest of this video to show one of my no-hits against Spamton, seeing as it was something I spent quite a lot of the past week on. With that being said, please enjoy my attempt at one of Deltarune's extremely difficult challenges.